This is another moment in culture. It is about a bus ride that I took in Portugal many, many years ago. I must say that in 2022, the banks in Portugal are now efficient and it is no longer what it used to be. Yet, I think this would be a joyful way to see the past and how the past functioned in a land many, many years ago. So let us take this ride in Portugal called the bus ride. One cold, gloomy, rainy day in November, I had to go to Oliveira to buy a few items and cash some money with my traveler's checks. I knew that it could take anywhere from 15 minutes to 3 hours to cash the checks. Since I had to catch a 12 o'clock bus back to Seixu, I knew that I had to get to the bank early. The banks in Portugal were usually very slow. First, the reception area were usually 2 or 3 tellers, and the line usually was more than 20 people. If there were any unusual circumstances, one had to pass through the reception area before any bank transactions could take place. "You're in luck," I said to myself. "There seems to be only a 45-minute wait. Wow, that is so great." In a few moments, I hear a voice. "Faz favor, please," the bank official at the counter asked with a pleasant smile. I showed him my passport and a $200 worth of traveler's checks and inquired about the exchange rate for the day. "It is 143 escudos per dollar today," he replied, gracefully taking my passport and the checks before disappearing into the back room. I wondered why he left so rapidly. Maybe that's the way it was done there. I wanted to wait, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. Then I thought, "Oh God, here we go again." He probably went for his coffee or bica and stopped to talk to a friend. My patience was wearing thin. I was on the borderline between being anxious and getting very angry. "Ah, there he is," I thought, hopefully, as he left the back room. But where is he going now? He joined in a conversation with another man as they examined my passport and my traveler's checks. Now I began to worry. Was it my photograph? Was it my checks? Now I had a beard, and I did not look like the man in the passport photograph. Is my passport valid? My anxiety grew, and I completely forgot about catching the 12 o'clock bus. It was now 10:30, and I was still in the reception line. The bank official again disappeared into the back room without giving me a clue about what was wrong and what could happen. The person next to me turned and said, "I was here the other day for 6 hours, and at the end I could do nothing unless I had my identity card." What got me irate was that the bank teller has known me since a little child, and he still would not conduct business without my card. The bureaucracy in this country is insane. The people in power will irritate you on purpose. I then saw the official once again appear from the back room. He started to walk toward me with my passport and my checks in his hand. Again he smiled as if nothing happened in the past 2 hours. "Are you Dr. Simoes, the son of Captain Simoes from Seixu?" "Yes," I replied in a relaxed voice, as if nothing has happened. "I'm very sorry for this delay, but the computers in Lisbon are down and we can't conduct business until they are operating." Why didn't he tell me this before? I thought, as he kept talking to me about technology and how technology has slowed the banking system. He turned to a man at the desk and said, "See, I told you he was the son of Captain Simoes from Seixu." He then turned to me. "I'll take care of you as soon as I can, but there is nothing I can do until the computers are functioning. Why don't you go for another cup of coffee, or even better, go for lunch and come back this afternoon?" "But I would like to catch the 12 o'clock bus back to Seixu." The computers are working! The computers are working! He announced with a strength in his voice as he had regained power to control the situation. The dollar is now 143 scooters. How many dollars do you want to exchange? 200, I responded with embarrassment, as he expected me to have at least a few $1,000s. I wondered why he asked, because already I gave him the checks. He probably thought that I had more money to exchange. I knew it would still take several minutes before I received my money. So still, I was anxious that I might still miss my bus. So let's see what would happen, and hopefully I will get there on time. It was now 11:30, and I knew I was going to miss the 12 o'clock bus. I tried my charm on him because he knew I came from a good family, and he was addressing me as Senor Doctor, or Doctor. Is it possible to hurry up the process? I know you have done your best. I know that the computers were down. I also know that it is not your fault. And so, see what you can do. It was important that I be personal and not blame him for the delay. At the moment, I thought of the New York, and I would have reacted differently to the situation. First, I would get angry at the teller, and then maybe I would ask for the manager. Finally, I would probably go home and write a nasty letter to someone and wait for a letter response. The response would be probably, "Dear customer, we are sorry for your inconvenience." Blah, 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 of course. "Dr. Simoes, can you come to the window now? Number 2, your money is ready. Just go to the front line." The man extended his arm across the counter and shook my hand. "Have a good day and have a good trip to Seishu." "Mr. Costa, please take care of Dr. Simoes. He has to take a 12 o'clock bus to Seishu." As I walked toward the front line, I heard several people complain how inefficient the banks were and how everyone should be fired. What is interesting that people in the line did not get angry for me jumping to the front and the teller taking care of me. Of course, I knew again, and I thought of New York, where I would be shouted and cursed because I was permitted to go to the front line and past everyone else. It was now 11:45, and I still had 50 minutes to get to the bus. I decided to do my shopping another day. I left the bank without even thanking the man. How absurd, I thought. Why do I have to thank this man? He did his job and nothing else. But on the other hand, if I were not courteous, my delay would be severe and disrespectful. Nonsense. Go catch the bus. I will be leaving in 10 minutes. I arrived at the terminal just 2 minutes before 12. There were about half a dozen buses, but only one had a passenger inside. That must be my bus, I thought. The others are not running. A man with a handlebar mustache was sitting near the driver's wheel and was working on the diesel engine. The bus must have been 25 years old. "Excuse me, is this the bus to Seishu?" "The bus to Seishu already left," the driver responded while continuing to work on the engine. "But get in. You can take this one. There is a connection to Seishu at Everdal. There is no problem. You will get to Seishu at the same time." "Thank you," I responded, and wondered why the Seishu bus had left very early. But it didn't matter. I was still going to get to Seishu at the same time. I found a seat in the middle of the bus. The dampness and cold of the raw day brought me to the distinct smell of ruralness that is associated with central part of Portugal. It was a smell of land that seemed to infiltrate the clothes and penetrate the air. It brought back fond memories of my grandmother's house, where at least twice a week I would ride my bicycle and eat breakfast. Her fried eggs she cooked had an aroma that I will never forget and will never experience again. The driver seemed to have finished working on the engine. He closed the engine cover and looked up to count how many people were seated. "Mrs. Lydia," he asked, "are you going to ride this bus again? It seems that you are coming to Oliveira twice a week." "Yes," she responded. You know that my husband died last month. God rest his soul. Now I have to go and fill paperwork so I can receive my pension. My two daughters are living in another land and really taking care of their own families. One is in France cleaning for some rich owner, and the other is in Germany working in an automobile factory. I am all alone here taking care of my paperwork. My daughter in Germany wants me to live with her, but I am too old. I am 75 years old and I have lived all my life in Portugal, and now she expects me to leave. God will take care of me. You should go, said the driver. Germany's a good land. My brother is there. The money he makes gives him lots of scooters. He is building a house near our farm. He hopes to come back someday, maybe in 10 years. Go, go, go. Go with your family. Go with God. You are now alone. She took out her handkerchief and wiped the tears from her eyes. I'm too old, she said, with a voice weak in despair. My mind flashed back again to New York City. I wish people there would be more sensitive to each other. The more I involved in reflective thought, the more anxious I became about my own personal situation. The feeling I had was, wow, this is so different. Different cultures, different people, different ways of communicating. And also I thought, many families are separated for years. They leave their small towns without realizing they will never see a loved one again. Unfortunately, I thought, these experiences are rarely discussed among various ethnic groups in the States. What seems to dominate the academic literature are deficit models about Latinos and African Americans. We are frequently classified as minorities, linguistically different, disadvantaged, and so on. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the diesel engine. Chug-a-lug, 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 chug-a-lug. The bus moved about only 3 feet and stopped beside a sign reading Paragem or bus stop. Then I realized that this was really the bus stop. 4 more people boarded and said, "Good afternoon," what was usually the greeting for everyone. As I looked around the bus, I noticed that one person was not dressed in rural garb. She was young and must have been a university student. I noticed when she sat down, she took out a notebook and started drawing graphs. The driver stood up and put up his change bag around his neck and started to count the change. The passengers automatically took out their money to pay the fare. After he finished counting the change, the bus driver took out a receipt book and began to walk down the aisle. The first to pay was a 65-year-old woman with unkempt hair. "Where are you going, minha senhora?" asked the bus driver. "I'm going to Lagos to see my son. He lives on a farm that is far from the road. I'm getting old. It is difficult for me to see him. How much is the fare?" 70 escudos, minha senhora." 70 escudos! Everything today is so expensive. The bus ride is only 15 minutes and I have to pay 70 escudos? For the price, the bus should take me to my son's door. If I could, I would go there, minha senhora. You know that I would take you right to the door. I know it must be very difficult for you to walk. Yes, life is very expensive for all of us. 70 escudos is indeed a lot of money for a 15-minute bus ride. I then heard a strong voice from another section of the bus. And look at me. I'm going to Vila Franca, and I have to pay 185 escudos. She turned toward me and smiled, as if she made her statement for the day. I guess that 185 escudos was about 1/6 of her daily salary. I smiled back at her in agreement. She turned to the bus driver and asked, "Are you sure it's 185 escudos and not 145 escudos?" Yes, it's 185 escudos. They looked at each other with a smile, and she reluctantly paid the 185 screw. The next passenger took out a 5,000 screw bill. Do you have anything smaller than that, Mr. Costa? I don't think I can change that bill. No, I'm sorry. That's all I have. Oh, there's no problem. You can pay me the next time. As I took out my money to pay the fare, I noticed that the two women in the front of the bus were exchanging photographs. One was a widow, and she seemed to be content because she had someone to talk to and share part of her life. Then I heard a voice from the seat in front of me. I thought there was no one sitting there, but since the seat backs were so high, I could not see. The voice said, "It is good to have children, but as soon as they can make it living, they leave this terrible land. This country has nothing to offer except hard work and little pay." Yes, I said, and left that as it was. I noticed that most of the passengers were now engaged in conversation, as if they had known each other for years. The student, however, spoke only once, when she paid the fare. When she handed over her money, she did not talk to anyone or look around, as she was determined to remain aloof from the rural folk. She turned back to her giraffes without once paying attention to her surroundings. Chug-a-luck, 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 chug-a-luck! The driver sat down and was ready to depart. At that instant, a voice from the back shouted, "Mr. Abreu, Mr. Abreu, he's not here yet. He said he was going to meet us here. Can you wait 5 more minutes, please?" "Okay," responded the driver. "I'll wait 5 minutes, but after that I will have to leave. I have to meet the other bus in Everdell." Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Abreu will be coming shortly." My mind started to wander as I looked out the foggy window on this damp, cold day. It was already 12:45 and the bus still not had left. I recalled my bus trips from New York to Boston. There was the uninvolved greetings by the bus driver as he stated the things to do and not to do in the bus. No smoking, no talking out loud, etc., etc. We had to obey the rules of the company. I always felt demeaned, as if we were treated like children, after the bus driver had read the rules of behavior. It would be the last time we would hear his voice. People on the bus would stare up front, read books or newspapers, and would not even dare to look you eye to eye. God, I thought of this city, New York, where I now lived. I was afraid of getting mugged. There was actually a professor, a colleague of mine, who was mugged just 2 days before. Oh, this would never happen here. I again looked at the student in her own almost embryonic position. She was the future and the past. The future because she was preparing for city life in Lisbon or Porto. In the past, she still represented the culture of fascism. She did not pay attention to the people who worked hard and suffered all their lives. I also realized how deep my own roots were, and that I also lived in the past and in the future. Chug-a-luck, 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 chug-a-luck! The bus was now going along the treacherous, dangerous, winding mountain road. The bus driver would blow the horn at every curve, hoping that no one would be on the wrong side of the road. I observed how his personality changed as his face became serious and he yelled at anyone who got in his way. "People have no respect for the roads these days," the bus driver shouted. "They always have too much to drink and they go out and drive on the wrong side of the road. And, of course, there are the motorcycles." The two men near me in front of the bus started a conversation with the bus driver about the hazards of the road. The bus continued down the winding road and it kept blowing its horn at every curve. "Any special stops?" the driver asked while turning the bus radio at a loud volume to hear the latest soccer scores. It seemed that 5 people yelled at once over the sound of a garbled radio. But the driver heard every individual voice. The first stop was to the lady in front. The bus went up in a small road until it could go no further. "Good day, minha senhora. I hope that your son is well. I have driven you as far as I can. You have your money's worth. Don't forget that we'll pick you up on my run back, if God is willing." "Good afternoon," she responded. "Until tomorrow, if God is willing." At the moment again, I started to reflect my lectures at New York University and how I had to talk and describe, analyze cultural differences. I wish that some of my students were here to observe the behavior of the Portuguese country folk, especially how most of them package their futures in the deity. The future would be, if God is willing. It began to rain hard, and I wondered what would happen to what is called sunny Portugal. I heard there were hurricanes forces in England, and the northern Portugal was now feeling the tail of the storm. As I continued to look out of the window, dreaming about nothing and reflecting about nothing, I realized that I was near my stop. Although the ride took only 20 minutes, I felt like I'd just gone through a graffiti-covered tunnel with posters that said, "Kafka for President." I was in a time warp, always from urban problems and politics. I looked at my surroundings and saw people who were poor and gentle and only wanted to take care of themselves and their families. They were rooted to the land. They had no idea what it was walk down Bleecker Street in New York City on a Sunday evening, hearing the rowdiness and watching aggressive acts. The Waverly Theater or Radio Music Hall meant absolutely nothing to their existence. This brought me a chill that reinforced the feeling that I was in an unreal world, where the real twilight zone was urbanization, poverty, racism, sexism, and the like, concepts that not even exist in the mind of the people in this bus ride. It was so simple, I thought. Why just not live? It was so easy. "Everett, the bus driver shouted. I got up to leave, but the driver said I should wait because it was damp and cold outside. I noticed that no one got up to transfer, and I realized that this was a waiting that was routine. It seemed to me that most of them were aware, and it did not bother them. I had been away from Portugal for a long time. Or was I a foreigner now? Just as I sat down, another bus stopped to pick up passengers. The passengers who were transferring to the other bus started to walk toward the rear. "Oh, of course," I remembered. "In Portugal, you must leave through the rear of the bus." As I was leaving, I noticed a student was still working on the graphs. Not once did she pay attention to the farm people, or even to me. She seemed to be preparing herself for the world of division, work, and aggression. This would be a world where money supersedes human dignity. I felt sorry for her and felt like going over to speak to her, but what could I say? She would think that I was some kind of crazy person or some kind of Portuguese American, a son of an immigrant who was trying to outdo her. "Forget it," I said to myself. "It's not worth the time or the energy." I actually felt sorry for her. She would be alone most of her life, dealing with the ideas of concepts and never feeling the people around her. As I left the bus, I noticed that the driver was helping the other driver carrying large sacks of potatoes to the rear of the bus that was going to Simoes. The potatoes were probably a delivery to a store along the way. As they carried the bags, the driver talked about the soccer team and who was in first place. As each passenger left the bus, there again was "Boa tarde" or "Good afternoon." I decided to sit in the front seat so I could tell the driver where to stop. I didn't know whether he made scheduled stops or not. The driver entered the bus and greeted passengers individually, some by their last names. He also greeted me, but I could tell by his expression that he did not know who I was. I kept quiet until the bus was about 5 minutes away from my stop. I did not spend time observing, since I was anxious to stop near the house where I was staying. It was again raining hard, so I finally gained the courage to ask the driver, "Do you mind stopping at the first house after the football field?" "Do you mean at the leg where the statue of Christ is on the hill? Yes, that is the house. Oh, are you related to Captain Simoes? Yes, I'm his son. I'm visiting some of my family here in Seishu. How is he doing? I haven't seen him for a long time. Unfortunately, he died 5 years ago. He died of a stupid death. He had pancreatic cancer. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. He was a good man. The door opened in front of the bus, signaling that I did not have to go through the rear. I finally turned around to look at the other faces. Boas tardes, I said in an affirmative tone, as if I were part of the community. I heard in unison, Boa tarde. I saw the student in the middle of the bus. She must have had boarded behind me. She did not look up, nor did she respond to any of my courtesies. I guess it was to be expected. As I watched the bus leave the road, I thought to myself, now, that was a bus ride. Even the wait at the bank made this trip a pleasure. It was really a true moment in culture. I hope you enjoyed this story. It is typical of what I call old Portugal. People live in rural areas. People know each other. Sometimes a town will know everyone in that town. Again, enjoy moments in culture.